and it's lovely to see everybody here. If we could please stand for the acknowledgement of country, diversity, commitment, service acknowledgement and prayer. The City of Victor Harbor acknowledges the Raman. We acknowledge their deep connection, respects,
The City of Victor Harbor is committed to diversity, equity and inclusion. We respect people of all ages, abilities, genders, sexualities, religions, beliefs, cultures and backgrounds.
We recognise the brave individuals who have served and continue to serve our nation. We remember those who have lost their lives and paid the ultimate sacrifice to our country.
Almighty God, we ask you to bless this council and allow it to be an agent of change to the people of this city and beyond. Direct and prosper its deliberations to the honouring of your name and the welfare of the people whom it serves. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. I just thought we've got an apology from Councillor Mann. It's the only apology we've got today. But I just thought that I'd touch base with you all and with those people who are listening on the live streaming. I don't know whether any of you went to the Country Football Championships not last weekend gone, the weekend before gone. Over 6,000 people. It was the biggest event that they have ever had at the SANFL Country Football Championships. And the town was really full. We also got fantastic feedback from the SANFL, who were really pleased with the way that Victor Harbor Football Club and the Encounter Bay Football Club ran the championships, and it was a very worthwhile $50,000 investment that this council had made into the town because of the economic benefit, and I think the advertising and marketing for the town can't be underestimated with that sort of crowd and all of those people from interstate. So I just thought that I'd give you that feedback. I didn't see any elected members there, but there was quite a crowd, so you may have been there. If we go to item 4.1, it's an adjourned item. The light fleet plant and heavy vehicles changeover replacement policy. You may remember we had a workshop on this last week to answer any questions that people may have had, and the recommendation is that council adopt the reviewed light fleet plant and heavy vehicles changeover replacement policy as provided in attachment A. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Henderson. Thank you. And somebody to second that? Councillor Burns. Do either of you want to speak to it?
Thank you, Mayor. I need to say that I've read through everything. It's all straightforward and seems all the consultants' report seems self-explanatory.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kemp.
I just have a question, if I may, from the workshop we had. I did ask a question about was auctions take into account in comparison of trade-ins compared to resale values. I'm just wondering whether any information was being sought since then.
Through the Mayor, no, not since our workshop last week, but we're happy to look into that in regards to the options for either trade-in or auction of those vehicles.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting of the 24th of June. The recommendation is that they be confirmed as true and accurate. If someone would like to move that way, thank you, Councillor Schiller. And seconding that, thank you, Councillor Kemp. Do either of you have any thing to say about those minutes? Does anybody have any questions or comments? If not, all those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The minutes of the special council meeting of the 8th of July. Recommendation is that they are confirmed as true and accurate. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconding Councillor Mackenzie. Either of you want to speak to those minutes? Does anybody have any questions or want to speak to them? Put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 5.3 are the minutes of the special council meeting on the 15th of July. Someone like to move that those minutes are confirmed as true and accurate? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie, and seconded by? Thank you, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to those minutes? Does anybody want to speak to the minutes or have any questions? Put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? They're carried. Thank you. We have had a request for a deputation from Mr. Blatchford, and that was refused. Mr. Blatchford was advised by email on Thursday, the 11th of July, with the following reasons. With reference to Council's Code of Practice for Meeting Procedures, I'm refusing your request as the matters you wish to address relate to the Crozier Hill development. And on the 11th of March 2020, you were advised in writing that your questioning and allegations in relation to the Crozier Hill development against Council and Council staff will no longer be tolerated. In accordance with Council's unreasonable complainant conduct management policy, any further correspondence and or communication from you in relation to the Crozier Hill development will not be responded to. I expect that any questions from the gallery presented to you by that relate to the same matters already considered will be disallowed per the provision of the Code of Practice for Meeting Procedures, subject matter already answered. I ask that you cease from sending any further correspondence to Council on this matter. If you believe you have a right to do so, you should direct any further allegations or complaints to other authorities who will no doubt decide for themselves whether or not they'll investigate. Despite our consistent requests for you to discontinue with your ongoing accusations and allegations against Council and Council staff, you have continued to do so. So that deputation was refused. We do have a deputation, however, from Mr. Victor Maloney in relation to the Pelican bike structure. Victor, if you'd like to come up, I think Katie showed you where to sit and how to operate the microphone.
That's it? Yeah.
That's it. Thank you. You have 10 minutes, Victor, and that includes questions from the council members that may wish to question you. But please have a seat.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me come and have my deputation. The idea is to have a plan set up where we have pelicans riding bikes and will actually be moving. We'll have a motor in it, and to link it in with the tour down under when it comes to Victor Harbour in January. And I've got a friend who's doing the mechanical side and I'll be doing the art side. So the main thing is I'm just gaining support from the council, the thumbs up to make it happen. And this is basically the rough idea of what it will look like. And the plan is to put it on that roundabout on the corner. So when you got the cyclists travelling around, you also have the pelicans riding as well.
A couple of questions, Victor. When you say you want support from council, can you tell me what sort of support? And also one of the other things which I might ask the CEO to respond to is those roundabouts are operated by the state government and not by council, so would need to put things in place and get permission from them. But are you looking for financial support or just support? What sort of support are you looking for?
And not looking for financial support because we'll do that ourselves. We'll cover that. Just support to actually make it happen. Yeah.
Victoria, can you respond to the roundabout question?
Yep, through the mayor. I'm assuming you're referring to the roundabout that's just here out on Bay Road.
Yeah,
is that
that's right.
correct? Yeah,
Yeah.
so they are DIT roads, and any structures that are installed upon them would need to seek their approval.
Yeah.
But if you did provide a formal application, it would need to come back through council, obviously. So unless council makes a resolution, there wouldn't be any official support provided at tonight's meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kemp, then Councillor Carembo.
Thanks, Victor, for coming in. I know the primary site is the roundabout. Is there any other sites that you would, if you don't get approval, are there any other sites that you think that would look pretty good? Maybe Wallen Reserve or something like that at the finish line or something.
I just think Wallen Reserve might be a bit late, but it'll be ended by then. And the roundabout will be the ideal spot, but even if it can happen on the grass opposite the reserve, it will still probably have a good effect.
Councillor Karemba?
Thanks for your deputation. What's the reasoning behind is it a business that you do, or is
No.
it just something that you have just a passion, or? Thank you.
Yeah, my art is a hobby.
Yep.
And so it'll be just, the main idea behind it all was to get some more recognition on Victor Harbour. And we reckon it's a great place here and it's worth highlighting in as many ways as possible.
Yep.
So it's no financial gain for me.
Okay.
No funding required to do it. It's just
Okay.
something I've wanted to do for a couple of years. And
You got my thumbs up.
thank you very much.
Councillor Kemp?
What's your timelines to seek approval? So you've got enough time to design, create and make the display. So how much time do you, November be the latest?
It'll probably take a couple of months to do.
Yeah.
We've been gathering bike parts and stuff like that. And my friend said he's got a motor ready to put in.
So
And then we've got to cut the panel board and put it together.
So if council can give you some form of approval in some way,
Yeah.
Within the next 2 months, that will give you plenty of time to create it.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Okay.
I might be up late at night, but we could do it, I reckon.
Thank you. Does anybody else? Councillor Henderson?
What is the timeline for the installation? Would it be the night before or the race? Or the reason I'm asking the question is I'm a little bit concerned about the safety of your installations, the safety of them staying there
Yeah.
overnight.
The plan is to put the installation on a trailer and have the electrics covered over. And so it'll be up on a trailer, so it would be on ground level. So that's the plan. Yeah. I just thought in the middle of the roundabout might be a little bit out of the way and it might be a bit safer on the roundabout because no one would be able to get to that, I imagine. Yeah. Thank you.
Can I have a thumbs up from people who think that's a good idea? Yep. So what you'll need to do is formally request it and go through Stacey Richardson, who is our events officer, because it'll be, we'll then have to make an application to the state government to get the okay.
Okay.
But what I might do is if Katie can contact you in the next week or so, then we can get that ball rolling and see what we can do to assist that process.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for making
Thanks.
the time.
Thanks for listening. Thank you.
Cheers. We don't have any questions from the gallery and we don't have any petitions. So we now move to the outstanding resolutions. And just to highlight that it's really important, I think, if members have the opportunity to talk to the CEO about the outstanding resolutions or about matters before they come here, that does save some time. And I will take them as read. So the recommendation is that council receive and note the outstanding resolutions if someone would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Burns, and second, Councillor Schofield. Do either of you have any questions about that?
Thank you, Mayor. Only to say that the commentary is self-explanatory and we've been getting good updates, so it's all right.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? In that case, I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. (9.2) is the review of the flag management policy, and this policy really puts into the protocols that we've been doing and the protocols that we need to abide by in relation to the Australian Federal Government flag protocols. So the recommendation is that council adopt the reviewed flag management policy as provided in attachment A. If someone would like to move that way, councillor Burns, and seconding that. Thank you, councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Councillor Burns?
Thank you, Mayor. Again, self-explanatory. The policy changes are quite good. When I was reading, I did have one query, but it wasn't that important. I was just looking at the Australian flag protocol. Used to be the situation where the Australian flag always had prominence in height and other flags had to be slightly lower, but I don't know if that's still the case. But otherwise, it all reads fine.
You, councillor Henderson? No? Does anybody else have any comments? I'll put it to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 9.3 for SAROC membership. I have got a general conflict of interest in this. There's no monetary compensation for being on SAROC, but because I have got a general conflict, I actually will choose to leave the room. So, councillor Kemp, if you don't mind doing this item, thank you.
Item 9.3 recommendation is that council supports the nomination Mayor Maura Jenkins to represent the Southern and Hills Council Regional Group on the South Australian Regional Organisation of Councils. Do I have a mover? Councillor Karimba, seconder. Councillor Henderson, do any two like to speak to it? Councillor Karimba.
I'd actually like to, can I move a formal motion to postpone or to defer this till the next?
You are requesting a formal motion for an adjournment.
Yes, please.
And what's the time frame for adjournment?
Just till the next council meeting.
Again, what's your reason for adjournment?
Considering the issue, the motion that we're going to be voting on later on in confidence, I think it's pertinent that we wait to see the outcome of that.
I just asked the CEO, what timeline do we need to notify SAROC? Just moved it. Just bear with us for a minute. It's a bit of a technicality. Well, we do that, yeah, just trying to find out the technicality of it if you can. What we're doing, Councillor Corimbo, is that through the meeting procedures, we're trying to identify that a mover of a motion may not be able to move a formal motion in the same time. So I think once moved and second spoken, you can move it later, or withdraw your motion, then you're moving it.
Sorry, you asked me to move the defer motion after we've already voted on the motion.
If we're feeling that a mover of a motion can't move a formal motion immediately, again, for clarity, I think if you withdraw to move it and let someone else move it, then you can move a formal motion.
Sure. All right, I'll remove.
Okay,
remove the motion.
we need a mover for this motion, Councillor Henderson, and our seconder is, you seconded Councillor Henderson previously? All right, so move it. So I'm looking for a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Mackenzie. Right. Do you want to talk to it, Councillor Henderson? Councillor Mackenzie? Anybody like to talk to? We'll go to Councillor Burns first.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I would have thought there's two positions. Normally it would be the Mayor or Deputy Mayor, I'm assuming, or just clarification, or it could be anyone.
Well, it can be anyone of
It
council.
would make sense to have Mayor and Deputy Mayor attend something of this importance, I assume, representing.
Yeah, SAROC, yeah, you're right. And it's just a matter at the moment, the Mayor normally does this role, but it doesn't stop anybody else nominating at the time. Councillor Corimbo.
Thank you. I'd like to move a formal motion to defer, and Councillor Burns told me that if I move to after the next council meeting, I think the nominations have to be prior, so I'm happy to move or defer this until after our confidential item that we're voting on tonight.
So you're moving, your formal motion is to move this item to the end of the business for tonight.
Correct.
Can I have a seconder for that? Councillor Burns, did you want to speak to it? No, sorry, my apologies. You can't speak to the motion, the formal motion. Those all in favour of moving this item to the end of our business tonight, please raise your hand. 2 against. That is lost.
I call division, please.
Those in favour, please stand. Councillor Burns, Councillor Corimbo, those against, Councillor Mackenzie, Councillor Schiller, Councillor Quinton, Councillor Schofield and Councillor Henderson. So we'll go back to the first motion. The council supports the nomination Mayor Maura Jenkins to represent the Southern and Hills Council's regional grouping on the South Australian Regional Organisation of Councils. Have a mover, please. Councillor Henderson, we already got them, haven't we? Sorry, my apologies. Do you want to speak to it? Does anybody want else speak to it? You've already spoken, Councillor Corimbo.
Sorry, I haven't spoken to this motion.
Okay. You can speak.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to say that if obviously what we're voting on tonight, no one else knows other than people in this chamber, and we may end up with egg on our face. So that's the reason that I wanted to adjourn it, but that's okay. We'll deal with that later. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak to the motion? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just clarification. Was it 2 positions or just one?
Just one position, but yeah,
But there are 2 vacancies? Or
just hold on.
And the information around anyone could nominate.
Yep.
Custom or tradition has been those representatives that sit on the Southern and Hills Council, which is the mayors of the councils, would nominate for SAROC, but it was open to any council member. But the council member must submit a nomination. It must be endorsed by the council.
that's fine. Okay.
Right. Does anybody else want to speak to the main motion? If not, those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Carried.
was looking. Thank you very much, Councillor Kemp. Now we move to 9.4, which is the Local Government Finance Authority Annual General Meeting. And the recommendation is that Council declines the invitation to submit a notice of motion to the meeting. Moving that way, Councillor Schiller. Do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. The 9.5 is the Audit and Risk Committee Independent Member Sitting Fee. If you go to the recommendation and you go down to dot point 4, 1V, it will say independent members will receive a flat fee. If you cross that out, because that's actually been repeated in dot point 5 or V, as you can see on the screen, that's been taken out of the minutes. So if you just take it out of your agenda. And the recommendation is that Council increase the sitting fee for the independent members of the Audit and Risk Committee as follows or as read, if somebody would like to move that way. Thank you, Councillor Schiller. And do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. You want to speak to that, Councillor Schiller?
Just a query. It looks like it's sort of tending to the upper end. Are we, what sort of rationale did we have for the figure that we've placed there? Is it to do with our geographical location or the amount of work that we're attempting to put through the Audit and Risk Committee? I'll ask this to administration.
Kelly, can you respond to that?
Yes, thank you through the Mayor. So the main reasons were looking at the benchmarking across the councils and then also at the level of workload. And in order to get quality independent members, we're seeing that a number of councils are actually reviewing their rates for the independents to ensure that council gets essentially the best opportunity of having people of real calibre on the audit committee.
Councillor Mackenzie, would you like to speak to this? Councillor Kemp, you want to speak to it?
Thank you. I'm not supporting this. I do sit on the audit committee and I know how much work's involved, and I know as a geographical, as Councillor Schiller said, they've got to come from Adelaide, but they can zoom in as well. We've had that done before with the chair zooming because they couldn't make it down here. When we look at other councils, certainly the bigger councils in Metropolitan Adelaide, they're lesser than that, but putting it up to $800 from $450 is about 90% rate increase. So I think that, you know, it's just too much money at this stage. So I'd like to move an amendment, please. My amendment is the independent chairperson receives $600 per meeting and independent committee members receive $450. That at least have given them a rise, and it can be reviewed at any time and each financial year. So I think that's a significant raise just for those two figures.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Is there a seconder for Councillor Kemp's amendment? Councillor Burns. Does anybody want to speak to the amendment? Councillor Burns.
I'm supportive of the amendment. I was concerned, having been on the audit committee, normally giving them an increase to attract new members, I think is a good thing. However, I we're concerned about the amount of increase. I think the independent members in the time that I've been on the audit committee haven't performed to the level that I'm used to being on other audit and risk committees, and I would certainly like to see a stronger performance and certainly stronger recommendations to both administration and elected members. They're identifying lots of issues, but that's as far as it goes. So I will be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Karimbo.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would agree with both members of the audit committee. I guess the other thing is it doesn't really matter what we pay them if we don't listen to them. It's really wasted money. I'd just like to point out though, Alexandrina Council and City of Onkaparinka are both paying above odds, yet both councils I believe financially are in quite a bind, and I would assume that's when they pay out absorbent amount of figures for jobs that they get themselves in this position. So I'll amend an increase, but I'm not going to support such a large increase. I'll be supporting this amendment.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to the amendment?
I believe even with the amendment, these fees are still too high. If you compare these sitting fees to the sitting fees for state statutory bodies, they are extremely high in comparison to those state bodies. So I'll not be supporting this amendment. I still think they're too high.
Is there any further discussion on the amendment? In that case, I'll put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment? Those against? That amendment is passed. We now go to the recommendation, and the recommendation is the amended recommendation. The independent chairperson, $600 per meeting. The independent committee meetings, committee members, $450 per meeting. And the rest of the recommendation stays the same. Would someone, we've got a mover. Was Councillor Schiller, Councillor Mackenzie was a seconder. If you've spoken to the amendment, you can't speak again to the main motion. Does anybody who hasn't spoken to the amendment want to speak? In that case, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. We now go to the Environment and Infrastructure, the Encounter Lakes Franklin Island Management Plan. And the recommendation is that Council approve the plan update as provided under separate cover for you. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. And do I have a seconder for that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Kemp. Do either of you want to speak to that? No, does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two clarification questions. I note in there's been prior consultation with the Encounter Lakes Residents Group. I just wanted to check, has there been consultation with that group over this amendment in the last 3 months? And my second question is, I note that this testing has been dropped in regard to recreational water quality, but isn't the water from Encounter Lakes coming in from the sea? So it's not like the same as river or
I am aware there's runoff often from when it rains, for example, where the Salvation Army building is. There has been runoff there, and different things affect water quality. But Jodie might be able to answer more fully for you.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, we have regular catch-ups with the Encounter Lakes Residents Group, and I was just having a look at my diary. There was one in March. So they were originally 6 monthly, but they get adjusted based on people's availability. And the recommendation for that testing to be dropped was based on the fact that it's not required by SA Health, and the residents group were happy with that recommendation.
So they have been consulted and they were happy with it?
They were, yeah, sorry, through the Mayor, they were the ones that actually asked for the review.
Yeah.
Any further discussion or questions? I'll put this to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. Land disposal, portion lot A, Bluff Crescent. We've been talking about this for a while. I'll take the recommendation in 3 parts en bloc. Would somebody like to move that way? Councillor Henderson, and seconding that, Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to talk to it?
Just to say it's a logical conclusion.
Councillor Schiller? Does anybody else want to talk to it or have any questions? Councillor Kemp?
Interesting enough, I went down there to have a look at this parcel of land, and from these maps, it's very hard to determine exactly what parts of the Lot A Bluff Crescent, because Bluff Crescent is a bitumised road. I'm not quite sure how's that. Sorry, it's council land. There's a road reserve for the road, so I'm not quite sure where exactly it is. So I'm lacking information on exactly on the whereabouts we're talking about. And of course, I didn't think that we were in real estate business where we go sell off land to someone who improved their land sales or land value by increasing their block size from council property, and that we spend $30,000, we get $30,000, and yet we have to spend $15,000, that $30,000 in land tax and everything to transfer the title across. So I'm very curious as to, as I said, I can't really understand the mapping against when I went down on site. So if someone could clarify for me exactly how much it is or where it is.
Certainly, I'll ask Jody to clarify that with you. We did have a briefing on this. No, we didn't. No.
We had a discussion.
We had a discussion on it. Okay.
Thank you, through the mayor. So the figure 1 on page 73, as shown in red there, the lot A is what was the whole road reserve. Council previously made a decision to close that road reserve, which created it as a lot. So the whole area shown in red is the lot. And then figure 2 on page 74, the area in red is the area in question, which is at the western end of the lot.
Thank you. Yeah, okay, it's harder to define when you go down on site to see where it exactly is. So according to the resolution that was made in 2002, I believe, that the whole property, 24 feet of each building site, would gain some of that road reserve. Sorry, 1966. The council informed the residents of the proposed road closure and suggested the landowners on Munya Crescent could build their houses nearer to the back boundary of the 20-foot back building. So you've got a resolution already in place. So how can this resolution override that one unless you revoke the first one?
So through the mayor, that was to encourage them to build on their own properties. But in this case, the building is encroaching on the council land. So it's beyond their property.
So how far is it encroaching on council land?
As shown in figure 2, there's probably a little bit of error in the aerial photograph, but pretty much the whole shed.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Karimba?
Just a couple of questions. Thanks, Mayor. So I've read some of the commentary. So this building had gained council approval, is that correct? The shed?
Thank you, through the mayor. Yes, as detailed on page 75, there was a development application.
And it wasn't picked up, obviously, then that was actually council land.
Through the mayor, the development application showed it as being on the land. I'm assuming, I wasn't there at the time, but I'm assuming that a detailed survey wasn't undertaken and it encroached onto council land.
Okay. Just one other question is, has this landowner of 17, because we don't know who they are, do they have any ties or family connections to anybody in council?
Through the mayor, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And are we foreshadowing any other houses along there wanting to buy up the remainder of the land? Has that been put to the rest of the community?
Thank you, through the mayor. Good question. We have actually engaged a consultant to approach the property owners with the aim of them buying it, but I think details in the report. They're effectively got it for free, so why do they need to buy it if they don't want to build on it?
Right,
Mm.
okay. Okay, thanks. Sorry, just one follow-up question. When you say they have it for free, does that mean they can build on it then?
No, it means that they can utilise that space as an extension to their own yard
Right,
because it's green open space that adjoins their property.
okay, thanks.
Are there any further questions? If not, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Sorry, councillor Krim, was your hand up and those against? That's carried, thank you. Biodiversity Victor Harbour, request for a donation. And the recommendation is that council provide $10,000 donation to Biodiversity Victor Harbour to establish a trial community nursery, and that a report detailing the expenditure of these funds be presented to council at the September council meeting. Moving that way, councillor Henderson. And seconding that. Thank you, councillor Mackenzie. Do you want to speak to that, councillor Henderson?
We've already allocated this in our budget, so this is just a formality, and I look forward to the outcome.
Thank you, councillor Mackenzie. Anybody else want to speak to that? Councillor Burns, then councillor Kemp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm supportive of Biodiversity Victor Harbour. I think it's a good initiative. I was interested if, with stage 2, if a location has been identified or when they believe a location may be identified, because obviously they've got a 12 months time frame. Once they get seedlings, they'll need to plant them. Where that's at now, still may be in discussions.
I'll ask Jody to respond to that.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, there is a workshop scheduled with council members for the 12th of August to go through the unsolicited proposal.
Councillor Karimba or Kemp?
Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. I'd like to move an amendment to this motion that council provide $12,500 donation to Biodiversity Victor Harbour to establish a trial community biodiversity nursery, that a quittal report detailing the expenditure of these funds be presented to council at the September 24 ordinary council meeting. So I understand that you've got to acquit the money they get in the way of donations. So if that could be, just make it technically correct. The reason why I put up the extra 2,500, of course, cost rises, and this is what something that the Biodiversity Nursery Group has looked at, that they could struggle to get the $10,000, but may struggle to actually identify and to get the full program up and running, because there's a proof of concept that a community group can grow around 5,000 seedlings in 1 year, which can be distributed back to the community or through to the council. One of the things that if we don't fund it correctly, I think we'll find that they may struggle a little bit. So an extra $2,500 is not a lot to ensure that they are doing it. Their project scope was as part of the submission shows that it's $12,095, but the other $2,500 is more of a contingency plan in case rising costs in the next 12 months due to water rights and extra, where they actually having this planted in a private property at this stage, just to get it moving as a proof of concept. If it works, then I guess council can look at the unsolicited proposal that has been presented to go to a bigger stage. We're the only council in southern Fleurieu who doesn't have a nursery run by volunteers for volunteers and for the community. So I think it'd be a good opportunity for us to do that, but I think we need to fund it correctly. So I hope members will support the extra $2,500 to make sure they are successful.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment? Yes.
Can I just check where the negotiations were with the Encounter Centre and Biodiversity Victor Harbour? Is there any kind of agreement there I know it's mentioned a couple of times in their document, but can I just get some clarification on that?
The Encounter Centre is not able to assist Biodiversity Victor Harbour at this point. They have different plans for their nursery and garden. But I believe that the council has talked to Biodiversity Victor Harbour about perhaps the down at Canton Place, some work that may be able to be done down there.
seems like a bit of a lost opportunity there, I think, because they seem to have such similar objectives. I really feel like we should try and sort of figure a way to push forward to get them to amalgamate and work together, because the two organisations both asking for big sums of money to help get things started. I know there's an existing nursery at the Encounter Centre which may have some contamination, but I'm sure we can clean that and get it up and running, and it's already a centre that volunteers use. Makes a lot of sense.
I think theoretically that's correct. However, listening to Biodiversity Victor Harbour in terms of what they wanted to do with the nursery, which is basically bulldoze a whole lot of stuff and take over the garden, and the plans that the Encounter Centre have, the model for making that garden an intergenerational space, and having classes in the garden and the nursery, they're very, very two different models that they're using, whereas Canton Place may be able to be used for Biodiversity Victor Harbour. So there's been a lot of discussion between the two organisations. The manager met with Mark Richards. I met with Mark Richards. We worked through what the options were, and it wasn't going to be able to match. Do I have a seconder for Councillor Kemp? Thank you, Councillor Burns. Does anybody want to speak to the amendment? Councillor Schiller and then Councillor Henderson.
I think at budget time, we always say that we need to be acting with restraint, and I realise it's only $2,000, but every time we have something like this come along and we keep tacking stuff into the budget along, by the end of the year, we're going to see our budget blow out. I realise that it's a great cause, but I think there's probably some opportunities for Biodiversity Victor Harbour to either seek grant funding through places like Bendigo Bank or some of the environmental type grant systems that are around. So although I think we just got to stick to our $10,000 and leave it at that. So I'm speaking against the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson.
Similar to Councillor Schiller, she said pretty much what I was going to say. Yes, we've only just put through the budget. We had so many discussions about keeping the budget as low as we could, and already we're having suggestions of budget creep, and we just can't allow that to happen.
Thank you. Councillor Burns, then Councillor Schofield.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarification question. My understanding is that this would be coming out of the community fund. Is that not correct? So there is no budget implications, like the amount that we've reserved for community funds, that pool of money, this would come out of it, or at least the $2,500 would come out of it?
I'll check with Victoria about that, but we did budget for, we had $10,000 in the budget for Biodiversity Victor Harbour. I'm not sure which area it went through. Victoria, can you respond to that?
Through the Mayor, no. The Council allocated $10,000 specifically for the partnership with Biodiversity Victor Harbour. You do have an allocation for your community grants program, but that sits separately. This would be a budget amendment.
As they submitted a separate application, then the budget amount is 10,000.
Yeah, there's nothing stopping Biodiversity seeking any other grants or donations. This was as a result of their unsolicited proposal, which Council is still in negotiations with. This was just an initial starting point for the proof of concept.
Are there any further discussions about the amendment? You want to talk to the amendment, Councillor Schofield, or to the motion?
I guess it's the motion.
Well, we'll wait until the amendment either goes through or doesn't go through. If there's no further discussions about the amendment, we're voting on the amendment, and the amendment is to provide $12,500 donation. All those in favour? And those against? I'm making a casting vote on that. I'm voting against that amendment. And the reason that I'm doing that is because I think that the discussions in terms of needing to stick to our budget and those discussions which we've had in the chamber are really important. And I think that if we've budgeted only 2 weeks ago to provide $10,000 to Biodiversity Victor Harbour, then we need to stick to that. As the CEO said, there's always opportunities for Biodiversity Victor Harbour to access the grant scheme. So separately, there's other grants that they can do and fundraising activities that they are able to do for that extra $2,500. But unfortunately, I think as a council, as much as there are really good projects for us to give more money to, and we want to give more money to, I think we need to stick to what our budget has been during our budget deliberations. So the amendment's lost. We go back to the original recommendation. If you've spoken to the amendment, you can't speak to the original recommendation. Councillor Schofield, you wanted to speak to the recommendation. Did you still want to do that?
No, thank you.
Does anybody who hasn't spoken wish to speak to the original recommendation? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. It's a unanimous decision, Councillor Kemp. We now go to the minutes of council committee meetings, and the first one is the Southern Communities Transport Scheme. The recommendation is that council receive and note the minutes. Would someone like to move that way? That's Councillor Burns and Councillor Henderson. Do either of you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mayor. Good minutes. Good to see their acknowledgement and support of Rotary in Counter Bay. Very good committee group, and I'm totally supportive of them.
Councillor Henderson, do you want to speak to those minutes? Does anybody have any questions or want to speak to the minutes? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. The Fleurieu Regional Community Services Advisory Committee minutes of the 9th of July. Would someone like to move them? Thank you, Councillor Henderson, and seconded Councillor Schiller. Do either of you want to speak to them? Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I just want to say that this was an excellent meeting. We had some very good input from Helen Duguay, the Care Finder team leader, from Bridget Kennelly from PHN, and also from the elected members from the Ankylilla Council. It is a joint committee, and also from our manager, Community Wellbeing, Leanne Simons. From that meeting, it occurred to me that the community wellbeing teams for both councils are doing such very good work, some of which I don't believe fellow elected members are aware of. So I suggested at that meeting that we approach both CEOs so that some of the teams can bring some of that information to the elected members to share it, because it really is some very good work that we should all be aware of, and our community should be aware of too. So I'm hoping we can incorporate that into a briefing session, maybe back to back with another briefing on another topic, and involve both councillors, elected members from both councils. So that's the suggestion. And I would encourage all elected members to come along, because I think you'll find it extremely interesting.
Thank you, Councillor Henderson. I think that's a wonderful idea. And we had a seconder from Councillor Schiller. Did you want to speak, Councillor Schiller? Does anybody want to speak or have any questions about those minutes? If not, all those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. 14.1, subsidiaries and representative reports. This is the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority draft business plan, long-term financial plan and budget. This has come back to us. I think that came through the council last month. And it's come back to us because Alexandrina made a couple of changes to that. The recommendation is that council approve the draft business plan and the long-term financial plan and budget version 2. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. And seconded by Councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to it? Councillor Karemba.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move a formal motion to adjourn this. I need to seek clarification from the board because I'm not quite entirely sure if this is the only reason this is coming back to the chamber. And I can't discuss the issue because everything's in confidence.
Formal motion to adjourn until when?
Next council meeting.
To next council meeting?
Yep.
Do I have somebody to second that? Councillor Kemp seconding that. All those in favour? Those against? I'll just, before I make a casting vote, I'll just ask, is it Jody? Whether or not there's going to be any consequences for that? No? All right, I will choose in favour of that formal motion, given that there's no consequences and it can come back to the August meeting. We now move to 14.2, which is the Fleurieu Aquatic Centre Joint Venture Agreement. This has also been endorsed by Alexandrina unchanged. The first recommendation I'll take as read. If someone would like to move that first recommendation. Thank you, Councillor Henderson. And seconded by. Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Either of you want to speak to that first recommendation? Anybody want to speak to that or have any questions? Councillor Kemp.
Just a question on technicalities on point 3. That reads as a statement or a note more so than a recommendation. So I'm just wondering if that should be in there or should be in the body of the agenda item.
I think it's just semantics. Councillor Kemp, I'm quite happy for it to be there as a statement. It's not going to do any harm by endorsing a statement. Does anybody else have any questions or anything they'd like to put? In that case, then I'll put recommendation 1 to the floor. All those in favour? And those against? That's carried. Thank you. Now, do I have any volunteers who would like to be council representatives to the Fleurieu Aquatic Joint Venture Advisory Committee? If we've only got 2 volunteers, then I can put them down. If we have more than 2, we'll have a ballot. So Councillor Henderson, you're volunteering. Councillor Schiller, you're volunteering. And Councillor Burns, you're volunteering. So what we will do is go to a ballot, and I'll hand over to the CEO and to Katie to do that. Oh, yep, it's not in there. Can I move a motion that we appoint the CEO, McCurdy, as returning officer? Thank you, Councillor Schofield. Seconding Councillor Henderson. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. What I'll ask you to do is to write down 2 names on your bit of paper. Oh, that's Victoria's job. Victoria, would you like to ask them to write down 2 names? Tables are turned. You got a question, Councillor
Just a
Burns?
clarification question. Do we get to talk to explain why we'd like to be nominated on?
You'll have to ask Victoria that. She's
Yeah.
the returning officer.
Yeah.
So, members, as Councillor Burns has rightly said, before you make your vote, you have 3 candidates who have nominated. So those 3 candidates are Councillor Burns, Councillor Schiller and Councillor Henderson. Provide each member with the opportunity to provide a brief statement as to why they think they should be the candidates on the Joint Venture Committee. So I'll ask Councillor Henderson to speak first, then Councillor Schiller and then Councillor Burns.
I've been an active member of the Aquatic Centre since the first week that it opened. I know how it operates. I see how people use it. I am aware of all of the activities that go on, and therefore I think I'm a worthy candidate to be involved.
I'm actually currently on the board and have been there for 2 years and know what is actually going on within the board itself at the moment. And we're hoping to transition the knowledge base from those who will be involved ongoing. Obviously, we no longer have our independent members, so that knowledge base being transferred for the next 2 years is important. I am a regular user of the Aquatic Centre, so it's similar to Marilyn. I know the ins and outs of how the Aquatic Centre works and operates. I also have advocated heavily for access and inclusion improvements, and we have received in this current budget for 24-25, $90,000 worth of allocation for capital works and some changes for access and inclusion. But I also am intending to continue to advocate for better quality parking, and because I've been sitting there on that board for the last 2 years, I've got a good knowledge base of where that sits. So that's my reasoning for continuing.
Thank you. I'm on the board as a proxy. I was fortunate enough to be able to attend some meetings, and in those meetings it was interesting that it was only Angela and myself that were advocating a number of risk mitigations and commercial improvements, and I believe that with both of us being on the new board, with Angela you obviously have a lot of historical information, but I can bring a lot of commercial potential improvements to work with the management team, or to offer suggestions on how they can improve and turn around the business. I think that you need that as well, and I think without that we'll probably still be in a situation with the Aquatic Centre in a couple of years. So I'd like to see if there's a chance to improve it. We've seen what can be done with the horse and tram. There's no reason it can't be done with the Aquatic Centre if it's done correctly without compromising the community service as well. It's not just about commercial focus.
So members, sorry, Councillor Bench, you have a question? Karima, sorry, you have a question?
I do, which may help other elected members vote. At least it will for me. If I could just ask one question of the nominees, if that's all right, prior to voting.
Well, well, I'd say no, because they've just given their outcome. Otherwise, I've got to ask every single member to ask them a question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was, yeah.
Sorry, so I'm going to ask the members. You've got 3 candidates, Councillor Burns, Councillor Henderson and Councillor Schiller. If you can mark on your ballot papers 2 names, because there are 2 positions on the Joint Venture Committee, clearly mark the 2 names of your preferred candidates and then hand them back to Jody, please. So members, based on your voting, with 8 votes, councillor Schiller is a preferred candidate, but there is a draw for councillor Burns and councillor Henderson. So I'm now going to seek you to give me one name of your preferred candidate, and the candidates are councillor Burns and councillor Henderson. So if you could mark your preferred name between councillor Burns and councillor Henderson, and then hand your paper back to me, please. Yes, councillor Corimba.
Is there any chance I can just sneak in one question? It's really important. If everybody's happy, it's just a simple question.
It's up to the members. I actually will go, members, would you like a question being asked of you or not? Can you please show your... I have 2 that would like it. Any other members would like to be asked a question?
Would be sorry, it's
No.
just a question for the nominees.
I haven't got support from the rest of the chamber.
Okay.
Sorry, councillor Corimba. With 6 votes, councillor Henderson is the other preferred candidate for the Joint Venture Committee to be nominated. I'll hand back to you, Mayor Jenkins.
Thank you, and congratulations, councillor Henderson and councillor Schiller. So the second recommendation is that council appoint councillor Henderson and councillor Schiller as council representatives, and provide a recommendation to the advisory committee that Daniela Leckie, Alexandrina council employee, to be appointed as an advisory committee associate. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Thank you, councillor Schofield, and seconded by councillor Mackenzie. Do either of you want to speak to that? Anybody want to speak to that or have any questions? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. Recommendation 3, that council note Alexandrina Council as the auspicing council for the joint venture. Someone like to move that way? Councillor Schofield, councillor Schiller seconding it. Any questions or comments? All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. And unless anybody would like to do them separately, I don't see why we can't do 4 to 8 recommendations on block. You want to do them separately?
Not separately. I like to do number 8 on its own, but you can do the other in block if no one else objects.
Okay, so 1 to 7 on block. Would someone like to move that way? Thank you, councillor Henderson and councillor Schiller. Does anyone want to speak to any of those recommendations? Put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried, thank you. And number 8, that council pursuant to section 193(4) of the Local Government Act exclude the land from community land classification. Someone like to move that way? Thank you, councillor Henderson, and seconding that. Thank you, councillor Schofield. Do either of you want to speak to that? Does anybody want to speak to that? Councillor Kemp.
Just a question on excluding the land from community land classification. It's community centre and a community building owned by the community. So why are we excluding it from being a community title on the land?
That's that. So through the mayor, if I may, so the council, when it was gifted the land and it was put into the ownership of the subsidiary, it was excluded from community land status. That was just enabling the joint venture ownership and the ability to actually build the structure and perform any functions without the requirements and restrictions of the community land management plan, because it's an aquatic centre. So this is actually a transfer, and every time council changes its ownership, so it's being changed to joint owners of City of Victor Harbor and Alexandrina, you have to go through that same process. So it's actually just reinstating what is currently in place. But you must do it at the time of the transfer, just to be held in tenants in common.
Councillor Carembo?
Just a question of the CEO. Does this make it easier, the fact that it isn't community land, if some way down the track we wanted to sell the aquatic centre, then it would be easier to sell, being that it's not community land title?
Yeah, actually it would.
Does anybody else have any other questions? I'll put that to the floor. All those in favour? Those against? That's carried. Thank you. There are no matters of urgency. There are no questions on notice. Do we have any questions without notice? Councillor Carembo.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess I can ask now both of the new board members, which I wanted to ask during the vote, and the fact that they both attend the Aquatic Centre. As board members, are they prepared to raise the fees if that is what is required to make the swimming centre more financially sustainable?
I will take that question on notice, as the board members may want to talk to the board. They are not responsible for the decisions of the board, so I can take that on notice.
Okay. My other questions, number one, how has the council given consent to the minister for the demolition of the old house on the, how has the council given consent to the minister for the demolition of the old house on the proposed site?
Which site are you talking about?
I'm talking about the site next to the ambulance station. Because the government have actually, I think in some of their commentary in one of the reports, it actually says that building will be demolished, but I don't think we've made a decision of council.
Jody, can you answer that, please?
Thank you. Through the mayor, council have included money in this year's budget for the demolition of the two buildings. So council has made a decision on that.
So we have made a decision.
Yeah.
Okay. If further tuck reserve revocation likely to occur given the overflow parking, the ambulance vehicular right of way into Hicks Court, will there be any further revocation of land to allow for that to happen as per the plan for the ambulance station?
Jody?
Through the mayor, I'm not aware of any further revocation of the land.
No, I'm saying because in their plan it actually shows a right of way onto Hicks Court. So will we be required to revoke that land, or is it just a
Through
drive
the
through?
mayor, right of way is similar to an easement, so it wouldn't require community land revocation.
Okay, so they can just drive on the dirt track then. We don't have to build anything or anything like that?
No, it would be just
Okay.
a right of way.
Okay. Well, that answers the next question anyway. In the community revocation report issued by council, it stipulates that the minister is committed to noise mitigation, vegetation barrier. Could the administration please, I think I've asked this question before and I haven't had a reply as yet, regarding the vegetation buffer that was meant to be there, considering there is a vehicular right of way, how can they have a vegetation buffer?
Jody?
Yes, through the mayor, thank you. It was asked previously and it may have been responded to in a council member update, but the response was that we would be waiting until the works is complete to determine where additional plantings would be required.
Okay, but then how could it be a vehicular right of way if you're going to put trees there?
So we would, thanks, through the mayor, we would look at where the plantings would need to go.
Okay, so it's not a true vegetation buffer then, as in for noise, because that's what the intended purpose of the vegetation buffer is, isn't it?
I would have to take that on notice because obviously you're talking about someone else's commitment. Was that the state government's commitment?
That's the state government's plan, which would have come through council, I'm assuming, or does it, their plan doesn't come through council,
I
their
don't know.
design?
Did it come to you? We'd
Um,
have to take that on notice. So
okay.
if you could, the
If I
question,
can find, yeah, I'll find the
Yeah.
plans and I'll forward them to you if you don't have would you have the ambulance plans? I'm sure you would have the.
so through
Sorry,
the mayor, your question was whether it came to council or to administration. So we
Oh,
have
sorry,
copies
yeah,
of it. I'm
administration.
not sure
my
if council
apologies,
made a
yeah.
decision
No,
on it.
no, we haven't made a
but-
decision on the vegetation buffer,
Yes.
no.
Correct.
Yeah, but the plan is to have a vegetation buffer there. And I'm assuming they lodge that with, do they have to lodge the plans with council? Or is it not have to come through council, the actual design of the ambulance station?
So through the mayor, we have been involved in the engineering design of the ambulance station.
Okay,
The landscaping would be undertaken by council at a later date. So it's not their landscaping plans. We would be looking at once it's built, where is the best location for additional vegetation.
yeah, the buffer, is that what we're talking about, or?
I am not-
Because I'm pretty sure in their plan, it says there's a vegetation buffer for sound. That was one of the requirements.
So we will take that on notice.
Okay.
I
awesome.
don't want to be put on the
I was just
spot and say
confusing that-
something wrong.
Yeah, no.
I will take it on notice, but what we have previously advised, and I think even only last week, we responded to a council member request on the same matter.
Okay,
It was in last Friday's council member
Okay.
updates.
not a problem. Thank you.
You have some questions without notice, councillor Burns.
Have a single question. I was just wondering if elected members could be provided with a breakdown of the proposed construction costs, and I understand there'll only be estimates for each building within the proposed sports precinct. We know the overall figure. There was a reference to an amount within the heads of agreement, but I'd actually like to understand what the proposed costs are for each of the main buildings being provided.
Jodie?
Thank you through the mayor. As discussed at our last briefing last week, we are going to receive an updated detailed proposal. When that comes, you'll be provided with it.
What timeframes are we talking about?
So through the mayor, as discussed at the briefing last week, we're expecting it by the end of the month.
Good, thank you.
Are there any other questions without notice? Councillor Kemp?
Just a question along the lines of the residents used to use Tuck Reserve as a thoroughfare to go to the shopping and to various areas. So now that's lost due to the ambulance site. So will council provide a temporary pedestrian access through Tuck Reserve from Hicks Court to Adelaide Road so residents can go to their shopping at Coles or Audi, attend church, visit people in the aged care facility like they have done before the construction of the SAS station?
Thank you through the mayor. Again, this was some of the discussions that were included in last week's council member update. So there will be a permanent footpath once the construction is complete. And at the moment, council staff have undertaken works to remove vegetation and mow an area for a temporary path.
Thank you, but my understanding from residents saying there's a bog area, people with mobility issues can't get through that temporary path at the moment.
Thank you through the mayor. There was never a permanent path. It was just a trodden track. We don't have it in the budget for a footpath expansion for this year, so that would need to come with budget implications.
I understand. Sorry, I'll clarify my question. The trodden path they had was over Virgin Land, which is rock hard. Now they've moved to another area to walk through to get through the reserve, but a softer ground. So is there any council can actually make that ground where it is a bit boggy, a little bit harder, so that people can transfer across that land?
Thank you through the mayor. As I said, it would come with budget implications, so might need to have that as a question on notice.
I'm happy to take that on notice. Thank you. Are there any other questions without notice? There are no motions on notice. Are there any motions without notice? No. In that case, then we move to confidential items. I'd like to say thank you very much to the gallery, because the first recommendation is that we go into confidence, because we're going to be talking about tenders for the provision of goods and services for investigator toilet block refurbishment. And because we're doing that, it may jeopardise council's ability to secure best value for money if the contract is known. Would someone like to move that recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Henderson. Seconded, Councillor Burns. All those in favour? Those against?
I was wanting to speak to it if I could.
Or you want to speak to going into confidence? Certainly.
Yeah. I'm just wondering whether this is worthwhile doing this agenda item, because we're not going to expend any more money outside the budget, and this is again spending more money outside the budget. So I see this as a waste of time.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion? All those in favour of going into confidence? Those against going into confidence? That's carried. Thank you. And what I
Yeah. No more people speaking to it. All those, in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Okay, close.
Thank you very much, members. And thank you very much, Kim, for chairing that item. I think the meeting is now closed. So I'll see you all in a month after, or 3 weeks after going and having a wonderful holiday. And thank you very much for everything.